So I said in the previous video that we're going to add a draft angle. So what we're going to do is now go back and edit our extrusion. So this was our extrusion for the top and the bottom. So I'm going to right click and edit this extrusion. And what I'm going to do with this extrusion is add a draft angle. Now a draft angle means if I change this to a much bigger value, it means that it adds an angle to the sides. Okay, so in this case, as you can see, as it extrudes, it gets wider at the top. Now, actually, I don't want it to get wider at the top. I want it to get ever so slightly narrower. So a tiny little bit. So what I want to do is I want to put a much smaller draft. So we're going to put an angle of 2.5. I just hit enter. However, this is still going out. What we want to do is select this one, this little icon here, to say opposite direction, and it goes in. Now the reason for that is because we're going to imagine this is a product that's going to be injection molded. Okay, it could even be a vacuum formed product. So a plastic product that has been molded. If you are molding any product, then what you have to do is put an ever so slight angle on the product so it comes out of the mold. If it is at 90 degrees, it drags along the side of the mold and it doesn't release. So we have a small angle. Okay, so that's why we do it. So I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to repeat that also for the bottom extrusion. So again, draft 2.5. 2.5 is the standard kind of angle for vacuum forming. Usually for injection molding you can get away with 1.5, but we're just making it a little bit more dramatic just so you can see it in this example. And let's accept. So now, as you can see, and notice my surfaces, I've kept them hidden because we know that it's extruding to that surface, so we don't have to change. So you can see now from the side, we've got this ever so slightly, it just goes out in the middle and down to the bottom. Now what we're going to do is just look at adding some fillets around the edges, around these corners, and on the top edges of our shape, and on the bottom edges. So let's add our fillet. We're going to start to begin with by adding our round on the ends. So we're actually going to add a bigger round this time, 10mm round, and I'm going to make sure that it adds to the bottom. So if you notice, if I don't select it, what it tries to do is blend the bottom one in, okay? Because of course we've got this angle, the draft angle that we added, so it doesn't see it as one whole line. So we pick it separately, and now, as you can see, there's our fillet. So let's do the same on this side. Like so. Let's zoom out and spin round, and let's repeat for this end. Okay, and as you can see, suddenly it stopped working. Okay, now if you encounter something like that, notice this line here has gone red, then what we need to do is remove it. So rather than cancelling all of this, let's just deselect. Okay, and let's deselect. There we go. Okay, now we're back. Okay, so that happened because I accidentally picked this line. So if that happens, don't suddenly click on the cross, just remove your selection from this box here. So let's pick this one and that one. And then before we accept this, let's zoom out, spin it round, and just have a look. Now, actually, now we're looking at the shape, I would like you to add a bigger fillet, okay, because I want a more rounded shape. So in that case, we're going to change it to 15. Let's have a look. Again, it looks a lot better. It's now, if you look, it's kind of more got a styling of an iPhone in terms of the rounded corners in proportion. But we're going to go slightly bigger, again, not 200, but 20. And let's accept. Okay, so now we've got a much more rounded shape. Now, of course, we could have different rounds on different edges if we did them as a different fillet. But from this moment, I'm happy, so we accept. So now we've got a round on those edges. And then we're going to add a round on the top edge. And because we've rounded the corners first, it should see this top edge as a linked edge. Just like that. In other words, as I round it, it tries to follow it all the way around because I've rounded or filleted these sides. Okay, so let's get a slightly heavier round on the top. 10 is actually a little bit too big, so we want 7.5. And again, we want to repeat that on the bottom. Okay, so now, as you can see, we've got a round there, and we've got a round on the top. So let's accept. So we've got our block, okay, or our kind of big product. It's not hollow yet, because one of the things that I want us to do next is look at splitting this product, okay, splitting it using a curved split line and using a split body technique. So to do that, we're going to add a new sketch to the right plane. Let's normalize it, zoom out, zoom in a little bit for me, just so I can get my shape. So it's as big on the screen as I want it to be. I'm going to use the Spline Tool. Sorry about that. I don't know what that noise was. It scared me. We're going to use the Spline Tool, and I'm going to draw a line across here, and it's going to bend ever so slightly. Okay, so it's going to bend down for the bottom section. So I'm going to start it above the center point here, and it's going to loop down. So just click once. Let's start. Let's go to about here, and then I'm just going to bend the line. Now, this is not necessarily something that you would see that we would do in a real product. However, this is about learning a skill and to try and show you how you can use split lines, but in creative ways. And it actually, for us, will make the whole thing ever so slightly harder. But in that sense, you're going to learn a lot more, and is a good thing to do. So I'm just, as you can see, all I'm doing is I'm just tweaking, just modifying my line to get a smooth curve. So now I'm going to accept that line, and I'm going to spin it round. So what I've done is I've just created this. So just while it's on now, I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this a parting line. Okay. Now it could just be called a split line. I'm calling it a parting line because I'm going to split the body into two parts using this line. Okay. So how do I do that? Well, I do that up here using the split command. So I'm going to split. What do I want to split? I want to split the part, which is all of this. So parts to split is part 1. So I pick it here, like so. And as you can see, it fills in with blue. And then it goes red and says entity to split with. Well, the entity that I want is my parting line. So you notice again, I can't really pick it in this way. But if I pick it this way, it allows me, should allow me to get my line, which hasn't worked. Let me just try that again. I don't understand why that's just failed. One moment. Let's try that again. Okay, part 2. There's my part. Entity to split. Parting line. Apologies. So, it's my fault in that I've forgotten to do something.